Happy Monday and welcome to Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. Nathan Zagura, the great Gibbe, G-Man, Dr. J.
Fresh helmet.
I know, G-Man's looking spectacular. We got to get this.
I would tell you the team will be on shortly, but literally the entire computer screen that is, I don't know what just happened. But everything on the live stream.
Should I come back?
Fix? Hold on, we might be. The entire we have a giant screen that's got four monitors.
I've seen it. It's beautiful.
Everything went white. It was like I saw the bright light and went to the light, and we're back.
I think just like we are. Hey,
I think we're on.
How about it? All right.
That was going to be one of those that I don't think we were going to be able to fix.
No, good. So today, want to thank everybody. Really, I want to thank everybody behind the scenes who made this happen. Loaded show. Nick Shook at 1:20. Charlie Potter, no relation to Harry, talk Alabama Pro Day, and Ben Standig talking his mock draft that just dropped at 2:30. So we got guests. We're loaded up. Big weekend, by the way. Big weekend. Some are saying one of the biggest. All right, G-Man. Is this you've updated the bracket for me right here?
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna talk through it right now. So this was the bracket that Bo and I did that was based solely on 4 criteria. So the South region was, would we rather host which team's daily radio show would we rather host? The West was the mascots fought it out. The East was uniforms and branding, which was really the only one that kind of lent itself to good teams winning. And then the Midwest, which was based on where we want a vacation. I still think we disrespected Houston relative to Gonzaga and somehow Spokane because of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, a different state altogether, was on a huge run for us, which was a shame. So as we stand now, in the Sweet 16, in the South region, Louisville's out. Texas A&M is out, and we had Texas A&M going into the Elite Eight. That was a big one. And then this is just the absolute murderer. UNC goes down to Ole Miss. We had UNC going to the final game. New Mexico is out. In the South region, where we picked based on daily shows alone, we did not get a single team into the Sweet 16. Not a single team. This might be one of the worst brackets in America.
We should have submitted this.
And we should have submitted just because it's so bad. So
who did we have?
So we had our Sweet 16 was 8 seed Louisville, 4 seed Texas A&M,
all right,
11 seed UNC, and 10 seed New Mexico.
Okay, 2 of those made sense. New Mexico did get to the second round. And they gave Michigan State a fight last night in the CLE. It was late. I don't understand the timing. Why are we tipping that game in Cleveland, Ohio at 9:30?
Forget that game. Why on a Sunday when they were going basically like one game at a time?
For the first 4 hours.
Why is Arizona, Oregon, the game that I actually wanted to watch, tipping at 10 o'clock?
Correct.
Eastern.
Idiocy.
The last game Sunday. Should tip at 8 Eastern. That should be the last game of the day.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. All right, so in that bracket, we've got nothing. Literally
Great.
nothing.
Congratulations.
In the mascot fight, all of you people who don't understand that gators are descended from dinosaurs and would be fighting these people in swamps and would have won. I mean, I had to convince it to get past Norfolk State, which is the bottom of the barrel Spartans. So we had Oklahoma, gone. We had Memphis, gone.
They were gone early.
Texas Tech is still there, and then St. John's is gone. So far we have one team in the Sweet 16 on an entire side of the region. And that team is Texas Tech. Now, the good news is we have Texas Tech going on to the Final Four, so I feel like that's somewhat alive. Because Florida and Maryland won on a buzzer beater, so we almost had Memphis.
Yes.
In the East region, this is what
you didn't almost have Memphis.
The East region, which is uniforms and branding, which means basically you're going with the better squads.
Yes.
Guess what? Who'da thunk it? We've got all 4 teams in the Sweet 16. Duke, Arizona, BYU, Bama.
What a final four in that region.
Duke, Arizona, I'm very excited.
I am a little nervous for my Dukies on Thursday.
Are
By
you?
the way, that game tips at 9:40 Thursday night. Yeah. Like,
are you joking?
No.
Why isn't that the most
In
prime
New
time
Jersey,
of primetime games?
In New Jersey,
Why
it's
isn't that
tipping
a
at 9:40.
Tip? It should be 7:30.
The 7 o'clock tip is Alabama BYU.
No, wrong.
Who's the number 1 team in the country? Who is the face of college basketball right now?
They should be tipping at 6 and 8:20 or 8:30 if you want to do that, but it really should be 5:30 and 8.
I mean, just idiocy on some of these times. How about Purdue in the Sweet 16? Purdue basically has a home game. That region is Indianapolis. Houston basically has to play a road game.
Well, doesn't matter to me because in this region, this idiocy, we had Gonzaga beating Houston.
That wasn't as far-fetched, I feel like, as you thought. Like, they made a nice little run. That was a good game.
And then we have Kentucky and UCLA. So UCLA's out.
UCLA's out. Tennessee, baby.
Okay, so we're down to 2 of our final 4 because we'd rather vacation in UCLA than Knoxville, which is fair, but Knoxville's a wonderful town. So we are down to 1, 2, 3. We have 4 possibilities at best. We can get 4 out of 8 in the Elite 8.
You still have 2 Final Fours.
2 Final Fours, and we have the champion. But if Duke gets knocked out soon, if Arizona beats Duke, it's good.
Well,
it's curtains for this bracket anyway.
If Duke loses Thursday night, a lot of people's brackets. For one, probably will not care about the rest of the NCAA.
The timing of the tournament leaves a lot to be desired. I don't remember it being like this. I really don't. I really don't remember it being like this.
What do you mean?
That like they would run games at 9:45.
Oh, no, they always have.
Really?
Yeah. Now, I will tell you this. Like, the Sunday games used to be done by like 8 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
This one game at 12 o'clock and one game at 2:40.
Yeah, no.
Like, come on. Give me a couple options in case, like,
one's
yesterday,
a dud.
Duke is boat racing Baylor.
Why not just start at noon, at 1, at 2, at 3? That's 4 games.
Stagger them so, like, when the first game goes to the half, you're starting the next game.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, basically an hour. That's what I'm saying.
Because a lot of times you don't really need to tune into some of these games till the second half. I don't understand some of it. Like the games in Cleveland, like the people did an awesome job.
Yep.
Mac, Rocket, everybody that was part of that, nothing but great things. I've heard awesome things all weekend about it.
Yep.
And the tournament feel and everybody was into it. But the fact that like there were still people working in the media room after Friday night's game at like 3 o'clock in the morning because they didn't wrap up till almost 1 a.m. is idiocy on the East Coast.
Idiocy. I agree. It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. I don't understand it. I don't like it. Not here for it. I can't tell you, though. I will say, from a tournament standpoint, I did consume a good deal of it. Wasn't the most exciting first week of the tournament I can recall.
No, but as the G-Man astutely points out, this sets up for an amazing second weekend because these are the top of the top. Like,
yeah, St. John's
gone
is
chalk,
the only team
and now
that's not, right? St. John's is the only like real high seed that's out?
I believe so. Everybody else is 6 or better. I think there's 1 6 or 2 6. Ole Miss is a 6.
Iowa State's out as a 3.
Yep.
And Texas A&M's out as a 4.
Yep.
St. John's is out as a 2.
Michigan is in as a 5. I don't know who they beat.
Michigan beat
I had Michigan
Texas
in my Final
A&M.
Four.
They beat Texas A&M.
I had quite the weekend with my bracket.
Did you? Nice.
Friday I went 15-1.
Whoa. Jeez Louise.
That's right, baby.
That's pretty
I
impressive.
have 12 of my Sweet 16.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's real good. How's G-Man doing?
G-Man has 500 brackets submitted. I don't really know what.
Unfair.
I don't know if he knows what one is great or not.
Unfair. All right, so March Madness is happening. By the way, G-Man, did you see your boy Johnny Fanta went on he was mad at people for complaining about the opening week of the tournament and saying that the guy from Maryland walked on that final shot, which, by the way, I believe that he did.
Is travel still a call in college basketball?
No.
Or in the NBA? It doesn't exist.
No, it really doesn't. All right, the draft, 1 month away, which people keep saying, but I think they're too locked up on the date. To me, it's like the draft's a month away on Thursday.
I would agree.
It's 4 weeks away, and yes. I know that all months aren't. They're 30 days, 31 days. I get it. Yada yada yada. But to me, to say it's a month away, that's going to be on Thursday. We'll be a month away. Today's the actual date, right? Because it starts on April 24th. So I get it. That's fine too. I'm not gonna fight you on that one. All right, we are a month away. There's still shockingly not much that has gone on in the National Football League. We're still waiting on a lot of quarterback stuff.
Hey, we have a new linebacker, baby.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. For the Browns, notable free agent still unsigned, Nick Chubb. Bring him back.
Come on home.
Bring him back. He's right there. He is.
On the wall.
I'm just going to stare at him. Bring him back. Nick Harris remains unsigned. Mo Hurst remains unsigned. Jermaine Ifedi, who played pretty well for the Browns down the stretch, remains unsigned. Elijah Moore, and then Jed Wills. At this point, I'd bring back Moore and Wills, and Nick Chubb. I'd bring back the three of them because clearly it's not gonna break the bank to do so. We know Elijah Moore wants to be here. I would love that. Jed Wills, I think maybe this is a wake up call. You've seen plenty of times where first round picks need a little bit of a wake up call, and they mature and they understand, hey, this is important to me, and they get it together. Now, it could also be like, you know what, this isn't that important to me, and that's the end of the rope as well. But right now, that feels like a pretty small, there's very little risk and potentially a decent reward because he still is a very, very talented guy with obviously a very talented pedigree. Jameis Winston signed a 2-year contract with the Giants worth $8 million. That
happened Friday.
Yeah, that's not much. By the way, it also says that he could earn up to $16 million in incentives, so that would double it. That supposedly reporting today is that this doesn't preclude them from signing Aaron Rodgers, and they're still very interested in that. I think a lot of people are hoping that from the Steelers standpoint, they get it done. Like they thought it was going to be done, but every day that it doesn't, it just seems weird to me.
Well, it sounds like, according to Albert Breer this morning, they're anticipating Rodgers making a trek to New York and doing the same thing that he did with Pittsburgh on Friday, that he'll be in the building with them for an entire day, see the operation. Breer is saying he wants something similar to what he had in Green Bay. And I'm like, well, you probably shouldn't have left Green Bay.
Nope.
Just throwing it out there. You were a god there, and now I'm not so sure what you are. And I think they continue to say he's holding out for Minnesota, and I'm like, but Minnesota does not want you.
Minnesota said that's right.
So make up your mind and let's go.
Yes. If Minnesota is out, which it certainly appears that they are, make your decision then. Or say, I'm not playing, or I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to play at some point. I'm not ready to decide right now, and I'm going to see if there's an injury here or there, and then I'm going to come in that way. But that feels to me like that's it, right? Isn't that's the answer?
Yeah, he has three options. He has the Steelers, the Giants, or he retires.
Correct.
Or sits out a year. I don't know.
Yep.
Waits to see if a quarterback gets hurt, he can come back and pull a Flacco off the couch.
That's a risky thing to do, not because it can't happen, but of course that's a risky thing to do, and there will be an opportunity. But if you want to play,
correct.
You want the offseason program. You want to get into their offense. You want all of those things. Me personally at this point, I just want him to do it, right? Like just go ahead and do it. Just where are you going to be? Just figure it out and do it. That's it.
Because after that, I don't really know what else there is left in free agency. There seems to be a lot of it, but everything's on pause for whatever reason.
Well, it seems like that's on pause. The quarterback situation's on pause. Russell Wilson, I know that there are teams certainly that are still waiting on that. I don't think anybody is going to find what it is that they are looking for in a free agent quarterback outside of potentially the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And I think the question goes back to, well, what are you supposed to be? What do you want to be? What is the end goal? Is the end goal what's the goal for the Browns in the year 2025? Is it to try to turn this franchise around? Is it to try and find the quarterback of the present and future on a rookie deal that can get you out of this mess? Is that the top priority, or is the top priority to get a little bit better and win 6, 7, 8, 9 games, 10 games in a best case scenario and get bounced in the first round of the playoffs most likely? To me, that's the question. And I think that you can have number one can lead to better outcomes than number two. But if that's what it is, if that's all that it is, and that's what your goal is, then I think you'll know, there are quarterbacks out there that can make sure you probably win a few more games than you did last year, but really not get you anywhere. And I think it's interesting. There's a lot of, and I would call it a lot of what not cool discourse right now, especially in Browns Twitter land, right, about what the Browns should do at number 2. And I think that there are people who make arguments for, you got to take Abdul Carter. That's the only thing you could do. Taking Shedeur Sanders there would be idiocy. And they're very entrenched in that and not open to hear, like, that it's impossible that Shedeur Sanders could be good. And I think there are people who want the quarterback and aren't open to other things as well. You could put me certainly more in the quarterback camp. I just think this pick and this asset has to lead to a real shot at a quarterback. And if you don't believe, if you're somebody who's in the, I don't believe it's in this particular draft, then I think you're moving out of that and trying to get assets. And we're going to hear from a mock draft that has the Browns taking Shedeur Sanders today. Also, it should be noted that Abdul Carter today on social media said he's going number 1. So for all the people that say this is a Cam Ward only draft, maybe you actually still have a shot. Abdul Carter saying that was a fairly confident sounding tweet.
Cam Ward's pro day this afternoon, by the way.
Cam Ward's pro day is this
Probably
afternoon.
Closer to 4:00.
I just truly believe at the end of the day, I'll leave it here, the only path out of this for the Cleveland Browns is to draft a rookie and have him become a success. And if that doesn't happen this year, I believe you get other opportunities to do that. That's my opinion. I'm not going to fight anybody about it. I'm not going to be nasty or condescending to them about it, but that is my belief. And I have seen plenty from Shedeur Sanders, and there are plenty of other people as well that think that he absolutely can run this offense, that this is the best fit for him, and that he could lead this football team to places we have not been in quite some time. And there's certainly more of a consensus on that around Cam Ward. So find a way. If you're a Cam Ward only guy, find a way to get Cam Ward. If you're not, then you're sitting at 2, and there are 2 of them. You're good to go, which is a glorious thing. All right, when we come back here, Nick Shook, he's going to talk to us about free agency. Let us know what he thinks is going on around the league. The quarterbacks, we'll talk a little bit about the draft as well. That's all coming up next here on Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, an official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. Welcome back to Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. What a treat this is. Time now to go to the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland, for Nick Shook, around the NFL writer for NFL.com, former contributor on the reg to this show, fine man who we got to spend great time with at the Combine, and now he joins us on the Twisted Tea Hotline. What's up, Nick Shook?
Oh, it's just a pleasure to be here talking with you. I feel like just yesterday we were in Indianapolis.
I know. It was a real treat. Did you do a March Madness bracket?
For the first time in years, I did not this year. And frankly, It's been kind of pleasant because then I got nothing on the games. I can just enjoy them for what they are.
That's right, which is a glorious thing. I would also ask Nick Shook, any updates for those people who know, one of the things I always like to ask when you're on here is your crazy dynasty leagues. I think we were in Indy. Didn't you say you was like almost playoff time, or was it the playoffs?
Yeah. I actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I invested in a PlayStation Portal to be able to keep up with the league while in Indy, and
Incredible.
won 2 college football playoff games from the hotel room on a portal. Came back in time for the national championship game and got upset in the Natty. I'm 0 for 2 in Natties this year.
Oh man, what happened?
Well, basically, we were a league that started in the group of 5, and one of our members is still in the G5 with UNLV. He made it all the way to the Natty, and he played a great game of keep away. And I had 4 possessions in total, and only scored on 2 of them and lost by a touchdown. So it's as simple as that. Turned into a rock fight, and when you don't value possessions, that's what happens.
How many minute quarters do you guys play?
6 minutes, no accelerated clock, and it seems to give us kind of the most realistic results. Although if you play 8-minute quarters with accelerated clock, it feels like you got a little bit more time.
So he really just did not want you to have the football. 4 possessions.
Yeah. 4 possessions in total. I think it was a punt and an interception on my first 2, then I scored on my last 2. And he got the ball back with about 5.5 minutes left in the fourth, and I never saw it again. He had a great power back and converted a couple of fourth and shorts. And, it's a tough one, but we take them as we come. But and by the way, for everybody who is actually even mildly interested in this, you can always catch this action on twitch.com/TheNickShook, where it's always broadcast live.
There you go. How about it? What a plug right there. That was fantastic. Fantastic. All right, Nick Shook, let's get into free agency right now. We'll talk Browns more in a second, but just your overall thoughts of this NFL free agency period.
I think a lot of the teams scooped up the quality talent pretty quickly. I want to say within a week, the Bible in free agency these days is my colleague Greg Rosenthal's top 101 free agents list.
Yeah.
And I want to say 75 of the top 101 were gone within a week. So teams understood where the value was and who they wanted. And with the increase in cap, a handful of teams had an exorbitant amount of cap to spend, including the Patriots. And a lot of them were not shy in spending it, but it is another interesting examination of how different franchises go about building their rosters, because you saw teams that maybe paid a bit of a tax to convince players to come over to their squad, the Patriots being one of them. But I also think today it's a good juxtaposition with how the Commanders have operated, where they retained some of the veterans that played a big part in their turnaround last year that were older players, and then they also got active in the trade market a couple times, acquiring Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil, who are also veterans, who are closer to 30 or beyond 30 as opposed to, going younger. Whereas, you see in New England, Mike Vrabel signing a bunch of guys that are classic Mike Vrabel guys, especially on the defensive side where they need a lot of help, obviously, and made some key additions in the offensive line. So, it's not the brand name value isn't quite there, but with where the NFL is now, the top tier players don't hit free agency anymore because teams pay them. They pay them early or they pay them in time, unless they're the Dallas Cowboys, and to keep their talent and make sure that they never hit the open market. So it takes a little bit of the pizzazz away from it, but overall, we still had a number of names and key players that are in new places and made for a really active first week, and it stayed pretty steady through the second week too.
It did. It just felt like usually there's kind of like that first wave, and then there's another real wave, and it just didn't seem like this year. It felt very quiet. And your point about Washington, I think, is well taken. That's what you can do when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. You can bring in veterans who are productive still in this league and you pay them a little bit more, but you need them only for a short period of time while you have rookies on that rookie deal. And that's what you're seeing Washington be able to do there. The one thing that has been so interesting to me, though, is the quarterback landscape and the quarterback kind of carousel. So let's just start with that kind of as an overall backdrop. What have you thought of the quarterback moves? And obviously, I think some of the big ones would be, Geno Smith going to Vegas, that paving the way for Darnold to go to Seattle, Kirk Cousins staying put, which I think you could have seen that coming. And then now we still have this kind of still undecided thing where Aaron Rodgers seems to be holding everybody in limbo.
Yeah. So I think first on that Commanders thing real quick, I want to make this point just because I know this will hit you in your heartstrings a little bit. The way that me a lot of the 2007 Browns, in which they were a very veteran-laden team and were able to produce wins as a result of that. Obviously, Derek Anderson, Jaden Daniels, but it is interesting. But when it comes to the quarterback situation, the way that these guys have moved around, the big domino that, started the fall that really created a chain reaction was the Seahawks trading Geno Smith. Yep. That was a surprise. It answered a big question in Vegas after they struck out on Matthew Stafford, which is really where everything started. And that started while we were still in Indianapolis. Yeah. They answered that question. Then, as soon as I saw them trade Geno, I was like, well, that's where Darnold's going. He's going to Seattle. And sure enough, as soon as free agency began, that contract was done very quickly. And we kind of looked at this market as, okay, well, where does Darnold go? We didn't think Geno would be involved. We thought Stafford might play a part, but that was solved pretty early. And then we knew after that it was going to come down to, the likes of Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. Justin Fields getting out of Pittsburgh and going to New York very quickly was also a sneaky move that I think affected the way that all of these puzzle pieces kind of fit. And like you said, now we're stuck. And look, my frustration with being stuck is as strong as anybody else's in the fact that we are constantly monitoring Aaron Rodgers. At 41 years old, Aaron Rodgers still holds power over the NFL world, unbelievably so, but yet that's where we are because nobody can really make their move at quarterback until they figure out where he's going. And in my mind, I know that the Vikings were thrown out there, but I don't think that was ever really close to being a thing. That felt more like, Rodgers camp trying to make it a thing. Yep. In my mind, it's down to two teams. It's the Giants and the Steelers, and it seems much more like it's going to be the Steelers than the Giants, although we are breathlessly following, and this is just NFL media, outlets as a whole, every minor move Rodgers makes. Like, oh, he's considering it. Like the reporting, the qualifications for reporting even has dropped just because we are all waiting and, desperate for even a morsel of information to the point where, okay, it sounds like, nothing's imminent, but they're talking. And then, oh, he made a trip there. Now we have to talk about that, but still no deal imminent. And once again, we're waiting on him to take his good old time. And because of that, Russell Wilson doesn't know where he's going to go because it feels like at this stage, if the Steelers and Giants are the two teams that need quarterbacks most, which we know the Browns do as well, but it seems like they're not an interested player with really either of them, even though they had Russ in the building. That they're just, all right, well, where does Rodgers go? And if Rodgers goes to this place and it's not us, then we go to Russell Wilson. I think the Giants made a good, a move ahead of time by signing Jameis Winston just to have a fail-safe. Obviously everybody in Cleveland learned a lot about his value and what he could bring to you as a veteran backup this past season. But, yeah, it's essentially two blocks, two Jenga pieces that have to be pulled before the rest of it can be solved. And, you weren't surprised that Kirk didn't move. I still think that could be something that ends up moving, but closer to the draft. We're about a month out now. Don't be surprised if something happens around the draft with him. But, yeah, until Rodgers makes a decision, we're all just kind of, in a waiting game here. And it seems like, as he's done in the past, we're going to continue to wait for as long as he wants us to.
What is his value now? The Steelers seems to make the most sense, but, can he change anything for a team that has not won a playoff game in a long, long time and feels kind of like they're perennially 9-8, 10-7, and bounced early?
I think that if he played like he did in the back half of last year, he can be good enough to basically do what Russell Wilson did with the Steelers, except the difference is, and I think the reason that the Steelers are waiting on him is that I think the Russell Wilson experience left them with a bad taste in their mouth with the way that the season ended last year. He peaked when they played Cincinnati and won that shootout. And ever since then, you saw who he is. There was limitations to that offense. He made some questionable decisions in key spots, like game against Cincinnati being one of them. I think it was where he rolled out right? And either he took a sack or he threw a ball in bounds when they needed the clock. There's just some things where you're just like, this we could be better here. I don't think we want to run this back. Fields leaving kind of left them with basically the only option of, all right, well, we get Rodgers or we try to run it back with Russ again. And I think what he could bring to the Steelers is pretty similar, except, the reason that Russ stayed in the starting job with the Steelers last year is because he had a higher potential in the passing game than Justin Fields did, and namely with the deep ball, just being able to throw those moon balls down the field to George Pickens. And now they got two guys who can win those matchups. But they think that, if you look at it on the surface, Rodgers probably still brings you more potential in the passing game if he can be the guy that he was in the back half of last season. You come back from an Achilles injury, you're not going to be as mobile as you were before. He's also 41 years old, but he's still got that arm talent. And I think that they're just, kind of projecting, well, if we can get the most out of him, it would be better than if we could get the most out of Russell Wilson last year. So we're willing to wait for that. But it is a stopgap. It is a short-term option, absolutely. And I don't think that they're going to be planning beyond that. And you do that in the draft. You do that in finding somebody that you can maybe develop, because they've swung and missed on guys like that ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired. So that's it. He's on your team for 2025 if he decides to sign there, and you try to get the most out of him, and you work on a plan for the year after, because what you don't want to be is a team that has to answer this question every single year.
Right. So
people in Cleveland know that all too well.
So one of the things that's hard for me to get my head around is I guess in the case of the Steelers, I understand it's not like they're picking at the top of the draft, but where's Russell Wilson at in your mind as a quarterback, and what would he do for a team that he goes to?
I think that he could bridge a team and settle it, stabilize it a little bit, but he's never going to elevate you to the point where your team is, better because of him. It's just that you can be good enough because of him. And it's got to be about fit and how he works with the coaching staff and everything else, and what he works with in the scheme of your offense. I actually think that the fit in Cleveland wouldn't be terrible with him. His skill set kind of lends itself to, all right, well, maybe we build out of the run a little bit and run a little play action. And he's got that deep ball ability, and he's still got that, that veteran in him that can find the open guy and can make the pre-snap reads and everything else. The big issue with him in his last days in Seattle was he was hanging on the football too long. I think he's kind of let that go for the most part. He did a pretty good job with the Steelers for the most part. I mean, there were ups and downs, and they didn't finish well, but I didn't think he was necessarily the biggest problem. It's just it's a fit thing. And so I think that he could bring that to a team that needs that type of stability. He could be that for the Giants if they wanted him to be. He could be that for the Browns. But, he's not going to elevate you past a certain point. He's just going to keep you. And honestly, I hate to say it, but kind of feels a lot like what Gardner Minshew was for the Colts 2 years ago, which is a guy who's going to keep you afloat, but he's not going to go win you a bunch of games.
So in that scenario, and then with Russell Wilson, I agree with you. I also think it's interesting that Kenny Pickett is here, and we can talk about kind of your thoughts on him as well, who is, by the way, Nick Shook, in the time that I've been here, we have never had a quarterback with a 60 winning percentage in this building. So Kenny Pickett at 15-10 is the best winning quarterback will have donned a Browns uniform in my time here, which is going on now well over a decade. He's here. Jerry Jeudy and Russell Wilson certainly did not work out in Denver. That to me is somewhat of a factor. And then I don't know about you, but if I brought in Russell Wilson, that does not change in any way, shape, or form my desire to take a quarterback second overall or to trade to one to take a quarterback first overall.
Absolutely. And I think that when I talked about this situation, I don't think it was with you guys, but it was Browns related months ago. I was asked, what do you do at number 2? And I'm like, you have to figure out quarterback. Number 1 priority in the draft is figuring out quarterback above all. And I was scoffed at the time as, well, what if Abdul Carter there and everything else? You take best player available. I was like, I don't care, because in this league, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. And you got to have some sort of plan or something to work toward the long term.
Preach, Nick Shook.
That still has to be the number 1 priority. I mean, I've watched it every year with too many teams. You lose your quarterback or you don't have a quarterback, your ceiling is just simply lower. So that has to be the number 1 priority, and I think it will be. Regardless of who you sign, it's still going to be, because you need something to work toward at the position. You can't win. You're absolutely right. And, the Wilson Jeudy thing, but you're absolutely right, too, because I think about that game. I think it was the Colts or maybe a different game where they played on prime time where Judy's running wide open on the left side of the field.
Yep.
And it would have been for the game-winning touchdown, and Wilson never sees him. I want to say he took his helmet off and threw it on the ground just in disgust.
Yes.
And if there is any sort of animosity or there's a lack of connection there, then, that's a non-starter for me, too. I totally agree with you there, and that would eliminate him from consideration as well. So, it is interesting that they added Pickett. I have a lot of friends who will text me and complain and whatever it is, and I'm getting Kenny Pickett's going to save us, like sarcastically. And I'm like, this is the first of many moves. They are going to make many moves at the position. It's just the first of it. And, in Kenny's defense, he did not handle the whole Wilson and Fields additions to Pittsburgh very well and kind of got himself traded out of there. But he did pretty well with the Eagles last year when he did come in for Jalen Hurts. They should have won that game in Washington. They didn't lose it because of him. They lost it because their receivers suddenly found themselves covered in Crisco in the fourth quarter of that game, couldn't catch a bunch of very on-target passes. And he did a good enough job, when they beat the Cowboys before he exited that game. So small sample size, of course, but I think he could do the job, and especially in the Kevin Stefanski offense, which I think is the most important thing above all. Finding a guy that fits what Kevin Stefanski really wants to do offensively. I think they got out of that that mode of operation when they acquired Deshaun Watson and when they tried to build their quarterback room around that style of player, and getting back to what Stefanski does best, which is building out of the run, building out of the zone attack, play action, that sort of thing is going to behoove them, which is why I still keep my eye on Kirk Cousins as we approach the draft as a potential option.
I look at Kenny Pickett as a bite at the apple, right? This is a guy that was a first-round pick, obviously not in a great quarterback class year, who won 15 of his 25 starts, which we would love to go 15-10 over our next 25 games here in Cleveland. I think we'd all be thrilled with that, quite frankly. 7 of them he led game-winning drives, so he's got some clutch meter. And I think the one thing that gives me like a little bit of hope there, and I'm trying to, you're measured on it because that's just the way you have to be in these situations, but is we've seen some guys get into better situations and be better, go back up somewhere for a year, Darnold, for example, in San Francisco, and then really kind of let things unfold for him. But Matt Canada's offense that he was operating in Pittsburgh was considered by many to be the worst offense in the league. And so an opportunity to get with, Stefanski, I think will only have a better shot of unlocking whatever it is that Kenny Pickett can be than what we've even seen in the league. And by the way, what we've seen in the league isn't bad. He did that with a solid running game and a good defense and went 15-10 in the AFC North. So I don't see why he couldn't do that here.
And a subpar offensive line. Offensive line in Pittsburgh. Let's not forget, he'd never had a lot of time to throw there as well. I'm not going to sit here and pump up his value, but I agree with much of what you're saying. And honestly,
it's worth a
there's
look.
So many things to unpack in what you just said too, because I think the Darnold year that he had kind of threw off everybody's expectation or understanding of what a quarterback can do from one year to the next. They heightened the expectation. Well, maybe we can turn this into a Darnold renaissance, or maybe we can turn this into a Baker Mayfield renaissance in Tampa. Not understanding that Baker had to go through getting traded, getting cut, being out there before he kind of was able to recenter himself and land in an offense with a bunch of talented receivers and a solid offensive line, and then find his success. Sam Darnold ends up with a team with 2 great receivers in Jefferson and Addison, and an offensive line that played very well. And Aaron Jones had an excellent year in his first year as well. And it was Kevin O'Connell at the controls, who was a quarterback savant, who's a former quarterback, right? So it's all about situation. And I think if you could protect Kenny Pickett, and if he is on the field, and you pair him with Kevin Stefanski, you get a similar O'Connell to Darnold relationship if everything else around him is right. So I agree with you on that. But at the same time, there's a number of different factors that we do have to consider with these things, and
100%.
So you can't project high, but you can hope, and I definitely see the vision there for sure.
Yeah, to me, look, low risk, as I said, bite at the apple. That's what you're looking at there. I want to ask you about a guy who shares your first name and who I'm staring at right now, as I do every day here in this studio, and a giant mural, and that's Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, and I realize the fact that this is such a good running back draft class, I'm sure, is impacting a lot of what we're seeing from running backs in free agencies. I mean, just look at the deal Najee got. Not that I thought he would blow up, but pretty low on terms of the money there. Nick Chubb remains unsigned. I want him back in Cleveland. I think everybody wants him back in Cleveland. It feels to me like at this point that the market wasn't necessarily what maybe Nick Chubb thought it was going to be out there, and so you can bring him back pretty cheap, give him some incentives, and I think it's a win-win, massively so. What do you make of the fact that Nick Chubb has not yet signed, and what kind of really the market is for running backs when the draft is as loaded as it is at that position?
Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head there. I think it's one of the most unique running back markets we've seen in a long time, because There's so many different factors involved. We have the depression of the market over the last 4 or 5 years, going back to the Todd Gurley and Devontae Freeman contracts, which pretty much scared every team away from paying a running back, except the Cowboys, who paid Zeke and then paid the price for it later. You also have a year in which the running back enjoyed a renaissance, with Saquon Barkley having a phenomenal year, and he wasn't the only one. Derrick Henry was fantastic in Baltimore as well. And then you have this draft class that is super deep at the position, and people are just salivating at the idea of landing one of these running backs in the draft. And it makes for a tough situation for a guy like Nick Chubb, who admittedly was never going to have a market that you would expect him to have even 2 years ago because of his injuries and everything else. And because when he did come back last year, and credit to him for being able to make it back on the field, he just didn't look like the same guy, which is not uncommon for somebody who comes back from a gruesome knee injury like that, and it's not the first one he's suffered. So I never expected him to get much of a market. In fact, the only running back contract that surprised me was Aaron Jones got a little bit more money on the front side of his deal in Minnesota than I thought he was going to get in order to stay there, considering his age. So I think that that's a very possible, the possibility is pretty high that he could return to the Browns on a cheap deal and maybe finish his career there. But I wouldn't put my expectations super high on him. And this is no doubt in his work ethic or anything else, because he's a fantastic individual and a hell of a worker and a great running back, at his best. But you also have to be realistic with some of your expectations. So I think, getting out there on the market, testing it, seeing that these other guys are not getting much money for whatever reason, be it injury, be it, just lack of belief in their potential within a team, or just market forces, whatever it might be. I think that him returning is very possible at an affordable rate. It's just something that you kind of wait out. And I think that the Browns also have to figure out how they're going to approach the room, because the attempt to fill it with a bunch of different guys didn't kind of work last year. I respected their efforts on that front when they did it, but it didn't really materialize in the way that you wanted it to. You're going to see it again. I mean, I would anticipate them drafting another running back this year, trying to keep Ford in the mix, and then also potentially bringing Chubb back and just throw bodies at it and think, all right, well, we're going to try and get as deep as possible and have a rotation back there instead of a bell cow. But I think the days of Chubb as your bell cow back and the guy that elevates this team are over, and that's fine. He's had a heck of a career, and I do think it would be proper. I did free agency fits with on NFL.com last week, and the last guy on my list was Nick Chubb, because I think it's just right for him to finish his career in Cleveland, however long that may be, 1, 2, 3 years, however long that may be. I can't imagine him in another uniform, and I think it would only be right. But I do think that this is a deal that will be a lower rate and might take a little bit of time to get done.
Agreed. All right, we're going to get you out of here on this one. Obviously, the draft is a month away from today. It'll start 4 weeks from Thursday. Browns number 2 pick. Right now, what's your gut? Who goes 1 overall? And then at number 2, you were talking quarterbacks earlier. Do you take one there? Do you try to make some move? What's kind of the Nick Shook plan right now as you see things, as you think they might play out? Because Abdul Carter today posted on X, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. And if that happens, then I think it makes it very easy for the Cleveland Browns at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with Tennessee. And it's been interesting that it hasn't been a slam dunk for Ward to Tennessee yet. And it keeps me intrigued, but it also could just be for the sake of variety and intrigue that they haven't been a slam dunk there. But the Carter thing continues to tantalize a lot of talent evaluators. Many believe he's the best player in the draft. That stress reaction in his foot concerns me, the fact that he didn't get it fixed and all that stuff. I'm a little worried about that over the long term, because you could have a Julio Jones career where he overcomes it and puts together a Hall of Fame level career, or you could have a Sammy Watkins. And obviously those are 2 receivers and not edge rushers, but foot issues plagued Sammy Watkins throughout his career and really derailed what was supposed to be a pretty fantastic time in the NFL. So I always get concerned by that, especially when you're spending the number 1 overall pick or even number 2. But of course, Tennessee, they hold they hold the keys to the car right now as it pertains to the Browns, unless they are one of the teams that are sold on Shedeur Sanders, because at that point they're in the catbird seat if they believe that Ward or Sanders could be their guy at number 2. At that point, they just have to wait for Tennessee to make their pick, and then they make the following pick. But I would prioritize quarterback, and it really comes down to if Ward's definitely going at number 1, how do you view Shedeur? Do you see him as the number 2 overall pick, or do you see him as somebody who's not quite worth that? And that's when things get crazy. It's going to be one of the more unpredictable drafts we've seen over the last decade, because the lack of strength at quarterback, and there's depth at positions that aren't typically sexy to people who like to, watch the draft. So there's going to be a lot of surprises, I think, and the Browns are in a great position to kind of affect that. But the hope is that whoever they really prefer could still be there. I know it's made the waves, it's made the rounds on the internet. Our guy Andrew Siciliano sitting down with Miles, talking to him after he signed his extension, and asking that quarterback question. I don't know if Miles is just putting on a bit of a front or not. I still question that, but he seemed to like the plan that the Browns had, and that makes me think that they're pretty confident in the way that they're going to approach it. So maybe all this talk that we're going to have over the next month over quarterbacks is going to end up being for naught. But I think it all comes down to how they evaluate these guys, because, like we said before, quarterback has to be a priority at this point, and I think that they understand that.
I think they do too, and it's one of those things that you might not know for a few years, and the reality is you can't reach for a quarterback who is a franchise quarterback, and you can't get proper value on a quarterback who busts out. It's just the reality of the league.
You don't want to be the Tennessee Titans taking Jake Locker. You don't want to be Christian Ponder going to the Vikings. You don't want to even Blake Bortles. He makes it to an AFC title game on the back of his defense with the Jaguars. Those are all guys that went high in the draft because they played that position. And you do overvalue quarterback because of the position.
Of course, because you have to.
It all comes down to your evaluation of the player themselves.
Yeah, to me, if you think, the way that I look at it is, if you think that Shedeur Sanders can be at his best, if you the situation, all of it, if you maximize and you think that he can be a top half quarterback in the league, you take him at 2. If you don't, then I think you have to reevaluate that.
I mean, look, most of this season, Tua Tagovailoa sat around 15, 16, 17 in my quarterback index, and the Miami Dolphins are very happy to have him. So
yeah,
I know it's not top 5 necessarily, but Browns fans have not had a quarterback to really cheer for that even occupies that realm, save for a couple of years of Baker Mayfield, since they've been back. So you got to understand the bar is low here.
Yep.
Let's not let our appetite exceed our expectation here.
Listen, we will take it's this guy's not going to be. Listen, first of all, we don't know, and even go back to that 2018 draft, right? You would say pretty definitively now that the best quarterbacks in that draft were Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think that's fair to say. And a lot of people thought Josh Allen was not a first-round pick. Some people didn't even think Lamar Jackson was a quarterback. And so,
and honestly, you look at Josh Allen too. That's an example of a franchise that had the patience to allow him to fix things, because he had accuracy issues for a long time. He didn't become the guy he was until about year 3 or 4.
Yeah,
he had patience for it.
Same with Lamar.
You're gonna have to sign up for if you don't have a slam dunk quarterback this time.
It is an interesting thing, and it is a tough thing, and it is really, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I keep saying all the time, there are no sure things in the draft. There's regardless of position. That's just the truth. There are no sure things in the draft. But the one sure thing in the National Football League is you cannot win without a quarterback.
Yes, and I would like to remind Browns fans, too, and this might be a little bit painful, and it has nothing to do with our guy Tim Couch, but it has everything to do with, unfortunately, the injury-plagued career of Courtney Brown and Gerard Warren. Those were all big-time slam dunks, top 3 picks back in the day, and those didn't work out either. It's a crapshoot, guys. It is a crapshoot. Don't lose sleep over it. Just hope for the best.
Exactly. Hope for the best, and we'll know in a few years. Nick Shook. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on Twitch if you want to get into his leagues and get to see what's going on there, as he came up just short, but I'm sure he's hard in the NIL portal and on the recruiting trail to get what he needs to put his team over the top in the next year. What year in your league? Yeah. What simulated year was this?
We're in 2030 now, and your boys Florida State Seminoles are currently number 1 and 6-0 and have been destroying opponents with probably our best team yet. So come hang out on Twitch. We can hop in the chat. We can talk ball while you're watching me win football games with the Seminoles. Why not? It's like a beautiful thing, just like this time we spent together. The great Nick Shook, everybody. When we come back, we'll be joined by Charlie Potter, senior team writer for Bama Online of On3 Sports, to join the show, and that's how we'll kick off hour number 2. You've been listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, an official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
On hold.
All right, welcome back to hour number 2 of Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Bally Bet, an official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. Time to go now back to the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland, because joining us now on the Twisted Tea Hotline is Charlie Potter, senior team writer for Bama Online of On3 Sports. Charlie, thanks for being with us today, and just want to get right into it. Jalen Milroe. Obviously, a lot of buzz coming out of that pro day. What do you think of Jalen Milroe and his pro prospects?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see where Jalen ends up, because I think he's uber talented. He's a freak athlete. I think his 40-yard dash kind of showed that. I know there were kind of mixed reviews on how fast it was, but the school had him at an unofficial 4.37. Even if he is just in that 4.4 range, he's still fast as lightning. When he gets in the open field, he's super dangerous. But I think the most interesting thing is just his passing. And I think not only his pro day, but what he did at the combine, you could tell that's been a major emphasis for him this offseason. I think he made progress over the course of the year. I know he had some bumps in terms of just some turnover-prone games, but he's a guy that's still developing as a passer. And I think he's a guy that when you look at him, I don't know if he's ready to start one. I think obviously the situation he ends up falling into will determine that. But I think he's a guy that if he can land in the right system, I think he can flourish at the next level, because he made a good point talking to us after his workout in Tuscaloosa, to where he can do a lot of things that other quarterbacks can do, but there's no one that can do what he can do with the ball in his hands in the open field from an athletic standpoint. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with him in the draft here coming up. And I know teams are going to like talking to him, but I think they're going to be anxious to see what he can do in the field as well.
I would agree with that. I think watching him, for example, at the Senior Bowl, I thought that coming out of that, he had almost kind of torpedoed his draft stock, just so inaccurate, even throwing on air, footwork issues, a lot of that. It's clear he's worked on that. At the combine, he looked better, and then at his pro day, he looked better there. I know he's been working with Jordan Palmer. What can you tell us kind of about that relationship and what really the points of emphasis have been to tighten up a guy that was unfortunately pretty accurate when the ball went more than 5 yards in the air?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a strong arm from a deep throw standpoint. I think when you look at that workout, I think he threw 53 passes in Tuscaloosa. I think someone charted that. I should have been on my P's and Q's and done a better job of that, if we're being honest. But I think he's someone that when you look at what they tried to highlight, they showed the deep balls, they showed the throws on the run, but they also showed the intermediate things. And I think that's where he needs to improve. I think that's been a focal point for getting ready to go through this draft process. It's just those intermediate throws, those deep outs, that throws across the middle of the field. Because we saw, he's great at the short game stuff, and then he has a cannon for an arm to launch the ball down the field, but it's the in between stuff. And so I think just continuing to get more comfortable, reading the defense, reading the field, making the right reads, I think is important. And you could tell there's some of the things that he was doing in that pro day workout that's what they've been working on. We didn't get a chance to talk to Jordan or anything like that, but I think they've been putting a lot of time together for this. And, he was back in Tuscaloosa in a familiar setting with some familiar guys that he's been throwing the ball to for a while now. And I think that, all in all, it was a strong workout. You don't really see too many pro days go awry, but I think that there's a lot of question marks around Jalen Milroe going into it, and I think there still are, but I think that most people walked out of that indoor practice facility kind of impressed with what he was able to do.
How would you compare him to, let's call it, a Jalen Hurts coming out? And I know it's not exactly a fair comparison because Jalen Hurts then went to basically quarterback finishing school at Oklahoma and lit it up as a thrower of the football that year. 70% completions, 32 touchdowns, almost 4,000 yards passing. But how would you compare Milroe and Hurts?
I think there are some similarities. Obviously, what they can do with their legs, I think, is highlighted. But I think Jalen Milroe's a better runner. Jalen Hurts is stronger. Obviously the tush push has been very successful there in Philadelphia, and heck, before he even got to Alabama when he was still in high school, powerlifting was such a big part of what he could do from a physicality standpoint. And I think that Hurts is someone that Milroe looked up to. He's a reason why he came to Alabama, because kind of the blueprint was there. But I do think they're different. You mentioned what Jalen Hurts was able to do when he left Alabama after Tua Tagovailoa took over as the starter. He really improved and helped himself as a passer. And I'm not saying that wasn't the case for Jalen Milroe, that he hasn't improved, but you could tell Alabama's most successful games this season, or his at least, were games where he really leaned on that running ability. You look at the game at LSU, Alabama just torched the Tigers in Baton Rouge, and it was because of what Jalen Milroe was able to do with his legs. And he made some big plays with his arm throughout the year. I think the Georgia game kind of comes to mind when you think about that. But he also had some inadequacies and some inefficiency, and really the turnovers against Vanderbilt. And I don't really put the Vanderbilt loss on Jalen's shoulders, but the loss at Oklahoma, the loss at Michigan, those are because he hasn't taken the next step as a passer. I think that's where the difference is going into this draft process, is that Jalen Hurts had clearly taken steps as a passer, and Jalen Milroe, that's still kind of a question mark and an unknown for him going into this process.
Do you think if Jalen Milroe had another year with Tommy Rees, that we might be talking about him as a different level prospect than we are right now?
That's hard to say because, you look at what Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan and his staff have done with quarterbacks. Michael Penix is one of the best college quarterbacks here in the last few years. And so I think it's tough because you look at a first-year coaching staff when you have a turnover like Alabama experienced, because you have a Nick Saban leaving and so many guys in the portal. You try just to kind of, put some Band-Aids on it and roll it out there and hope for the best. I do think that some continuity as offensive coordinator would have helped him. He didn't have that at all throughout his career, 4 years, 4 different play callers. And so, or 3 years playing actually in 3 different play callers. They're on their 4th this year. But he's a guy that I think continuity could have helped. I think Tommy Rees did some nice things with him a couple years ago. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because that's kind of a hypothetical question. You don't really know what has happened. I do think, though, again, that continuity with Jalen probably would have helped.
Do you think that that's a pairing that those two would like to re-explore?
I think Jalen would be open to it, yeah, no doubt. I think he's someone that it was crazy when we were in Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. He just kind of lit a fire under Bill O'Brien, but I think that says a lot about how he felt about Tommy Rees and what he was able to do with him just from a development and approach standpoint. So I think he's more than comfortable with Tommy Rees. I think that would be a pairing that it would make sense because that familiarity, you always like to have that, but you can kind of pick up where you left off a little bit. Now, Jalen's progressed again, having another year in college, another year starting in the SEC under his belt. So I think that would be something that he would be more than open to.
What round do you think he ends up going?
It's tough to say because quarterbacks, you see crazy things happen all the time.
Yes, you do.
I think he's a day 2 type of player.
Okay.
I think the 3rd round makes a lot of sense. I would be surprised if he goes to day 3, but I think day 2. Jalen Milroe's a day 2 pick. I think he has the physicality and the athletic ability of a first-round player. But I think, again, going back to the passing, the question marks there, I think day 2 makes a lot of sense. So I'd say probably round 3. I think that's where I would expect him to go. But I'm not going to sit here and act like I've analyzed the entire draft and know exactly what's ahead of it.
Of course. Well, a couple guys that probably won't be in play for the Browns because they will likely go in the first round, Tyler Booker and Jihad Campbell. What can you tell us about those two? How good are they? And Campbell seems like a guy that is going to make a team very, very happy.
Yeah, Jihad he's a great guy, but he's an even better player. I knew that he was going to have a good combine, but when you look at him, he's just such a physical freak. And it's funny because he changed to number 11 this year, and I think back in the spring we asked him why, and he said it's just a freakier number, and it works. So he's a guy that he has all the tools. He can line up all over the defense. Alabama this year kind of used him off the edge a little bit more when he's been more of an off-ball linebacker, and he really flourished. He led the team in sacks. He led the team in tackles. He's a guy that's just going to do everything for his team at the next level. And Tyler Booker, he's the best interior lineman in this draft, but that's a dude that you want in your locker room. He's a great leader. He's going to get on guys that aren't doing the right thing, regardless of their age. He kind of was starting to do that as a true freshman at Alabama when he was kind of rotating at both guard positions before locking down a starting job. And so both of those guys are great. You're right. I don't think they're going to have to wait very long. I know there's kind of been mixed reviews on Tyler Burke. I think he did help himself out with what he was able to do at Pro Day after maybe a so-so combine performance. But you had someone that tore it up in Indianapolis. He had surgery on his shoulder, I believe, and he had his arm in a sling, but I don't think that's going to deter anybody. That's just basically maintenance. But, yeah, those guys they're not going to have to wait to hear their name called very long, and they're guys that are going to be playing on Sundays for a very, very long time.
Do you have a favorite of kind of the other guys, maybe somebody you think might be a day 3 Alabama gem?
It's tough. I like a lot of the dudes in this draft. It's a smaller class, and that I think goes hand in hand with a 9-4 finish, if we're being completely honest.
Yep.
A lot of them, the seniors. You had just 3 underclassmen turn pro, which is, what was to be expected. It was Milroe, Booker, and Campbell, but the rest are just seniors. I'm interested in the tight end group with C.J. Dupree and Robbie Utes. Robbie Utes I think he came in at 278 at his pro day. He's a big tight end. But he's kind of that fullback, kind of jack of all trades kind of player, kind of throwback player that you just kind of want to see succeed in the NFL. Teams are going to love him. Fans are going to love him. He has a handlebar mustache and a mullet. He's a guy that just puts his hand in the dirt and does all the dirty work. And then a guy like Malachi Moore, he came back for a 5th season. He's played a ton of football at Alabama. He might be maybe a little undersized for a safety. He hasn't been healthy to end his career, and then I know he's dealt with injuries throughout his career, but just a super good dude and a guy that, again, a leader. He's been productive. He played right away in Nick Saban's secondary, which is hard to do in Tuscaloosa, and then continue to play throughout his career. I think guys like that I'm really interested in. I mean, you could go down the list. All the seniors you're rooting for after covering them for the last 4 or 5 years,
totally.
But yeah, those are the guys that kind of come to my mind first off.
Awesome. Well, this has been great stuff, Charlie. We really appreciate the time, and we'll see what happens if we get any Bama guys here to the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, some very good ones on the roster already. Thank you so much for your time today.
No problem, guys. Yeah, you got Tony Brown up there. You got a good one.
What a human being that guy is. We love Tony Brown on the show. Also want to say congrats to Crimson Tide's men basketball team on a Sweet 16 appearance. I know you were in town covering them this weekend, so I hope the city treated you well.
Yep, be in Newark this week, looking for another trip to Final Four. So thanks for having me, guys.
You got it. All right, that was Charlie Potter, senior team writer for Bama Online of On3 Sports, and he joined us via the Twisted Tea hotline, presented by Twisted Tea, Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. All right, we'll be back with more coming up at the bottom of this hour. Ben Standig, Washington Commanders writer for The Athletic, joins the show to talk about his mock draft. It's going to be a lot of fun coming up here. Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back to Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. I want to let you know that Morgan Wallen is bringing his I'm the Problem tour to Huntington Bank Field on August 15th and 16th with country sensations Miranda Lambert, Thomas Rhett, and Ella Langley. Tickets on sale now at huntingtonbankfield.com/Morgan Wallen. Don't miss out on this must-see summer show. Also want to let you guys know that this month's winner of the local business platform presented by Minutemen is Square 22. Locally owned and operated, Square 22 Restaurant and Bar offers unique dining experience to the center of Strongsville. Check them out today. It's a perfect spot for casual meals, date nights, private dining, and happy hour alike. To learn more about the local business platform, visit browns.com/community/local business platform. All right, gentlemen, the Browns did make a little bit of news over the weekend, and the Browns signed linebacker Jerome Baker to a one-year deal. Baker entering his 8th NFL season out of Ohio State. He also attended high school at nearby Benedictine and was born in Cleveland. The Browns now have how many, G-men? Players who took the Benedictine to Ohio State to Browns path.
2 players that took the Benedictine to Ohio State path.
And who was the other?
Being Mike Hall Jr., who spent 1 year at Benedictine before transferring to Streetsboro to finish out his career.
G-Man, you always come in a big way, G-Man, in a real big way. Baker was originally the 73rd overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft. It's a third-round pick taken by the Miami Dolphins. Spent 6 years with the Dolphins, playing in 94 games with 82 starts, recording 587 tackles, 31 tackles for loss, 22.5 sacks, 5 picks, and 6 forced fumbles. Last year, signed with the Seahawks. Spent some time on the PUP list, but started 5 games before being traded to Tennessee on October 23rd. He had 61 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 4 passes, defense, the forced fumble, and 2 sacks in 10 games. Baker brings some speed and obviously some pedigree to the Browns linebacker room, which now, looks like we got the question mark around JOK, unfortunately, but now your starters probably in a 3 linebacker alignment would be in the middle, we've got Jordan Hicks. At the Will, we would have Baker, and at the Sam, you would have Devin Bush, who's also back with the Cleveland Browns as well. And then you've got Diabate, you've got Winston Reed, you've got Buki Watson behind him. So the Browns right there, all of a sudden you've got a pretty good, 7 guys in that room.
I was going to say, does that change how we look at that being a priority?
I think so. I like Baker on a 1-year deal. It's the last year for Hicks. Baker's on a 1-year deal. Bush is on a 1-year deal. So you do need some type of, younger player that you have stability. That is JOK, who's one of the best off-ball linebackers in the NFL. We just don't know what his availability is going to be, unfortunately, there. Cam Ward's pro day is going on. Is it going on now? Is he throwing yet?
It's an amazing fumble by every TV network.
Okay.
NFL Network's not even live till 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So he started early. Now, he was supposed to start around 3:30. He's going now. NFL Network's showing an old game. ESPN's got women's college basketball. ESPN2. What did ESPN2 have on? ESPN News.
So he's literally throwing right now?
Yeah. Oh, they had First Take on ESPN News. ESPN2 had that Tiger Woods Rory golf thing re-air. No one has Cam Ward's pro day. If it's truly going on right now, no one has it.
The passing workout will air on NFL Network at approximately 4:30.
Does that mean it's not live?
I don't know. I would imagine if it was live, somebody would have at least put video out that was there on a cell phone. We are not seeing that at all. So maybe it is.
So maybe it's not happening yet. It wasn't supposed to start till 4.
So that's where we're at right now. I will tell you that the Titans did take Cam Ward out to dinner last night. Paul Kuharski reported that.
He would know. He's pretty ingrained with that beat. He's probably one of the best ones there.
Yeah, what Paul Kuharski said was Titans took Cam Ward to dinner last night. Also said the Titans contingent at the Miami Pro Day to see Cam Ward includes Chad Brinker, Mike Borgonzi, Reggie McKenzie, Dave Ziegler, Brian Callahan, Nick Holes, and more. That is a pretty loaded group. That is basically everybody at the top of their – it's everybody at the top of that organization.
So, we're talking a lot about Cam Ward's Pro Day, but it's also a certain tight ends pro day for the U that the Browns could have an interest
Elijah Arroyo, certainly interested to see him, and I think probably one of the big questions with him will be much more around just his health. Where is he at? Is he ready to go? Is he able to fully participate in this pro day here? We'll see that. By the way, today, big birthday day. Peyton Manning's birthday today?
Yes.
Did you see over the weekend, I believe it was yesterday actually, Tiger Woods has a new squeeze announced in a very bizarre way.
Yep.
I'm going to make this public, but then please respect my privacy. And the second picture, he kind of looks like Weekend at Bernie's to me. It doesn't even look real.
I don't know where this goes. I mean, are we feeling bad because no one's paying attention to us because now we're done for the year in golf? So now we've got to post something about a relationship that we don't want anybody asking questions about?
It was just very strange.
Come on, Tigre. You're better than this.
It was very strange.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as we're
No, we saw it. I don't understand it.
That even got the ambassador of Cool. Like, what is going on here? And I'm like, I don't know.
Don't play him.
It just was odd.
It's very odd. I don't know what's happening there.
He definitely has a type. I'll say that. There's a pretty good through line.
Yeah.
On the ladies of Tiger Woods. But wish him a speedy recovery. Again, it was just.
What are we still like 3 weeks from the Masters too? I feel like the Masters is late.
It was just odd. We live in a strange society. Let's just go ahead and just throw that out there now. Social media is a part of it, but as Enough from the Clown said, making a public post announcing something to ask for privacy about that thing is it's a one of a kind type thing to do it.
The Masters doesn't start till April 10th.
No.
This
By the way, according to Zach Jackson, the Titans have their head coach, GM, team president, and more from their football staff here at Miami. And in case you wanted more of a tell, the Titans also have their in-house TV and website production team here. They have the number one pick. They can do whatever they want.
That's impressive.
I didn't know that you were allowed to bring team stuff to
I was not aware either.
A pro day. Interesting.
Unless maybe they're following a scout or – because I think we've done that before.
We've done that too. Oh, you're right. That could be it. It does feel, however, like it is.
Yeah. I mean, were they all at Abdul Carter's? Were they all
has he had his?
Oh, no. Penn State's Friday.
So we'll find out Friday.
And then Colorado's is the following Friday.
My guess is that they will have the same.
That Colorado one's going to be a circus of epic proportions.
They will have the same thing. The biggest circus pro day in the history of pro days was Johnny Football. Camo.
There was a former president of the United States.
George Bush on a golf cart.
That's right.
Yeah, that pretty much had it all. All right, when we come back, Ben Standig, Washington Commanders writer for The Athletic, joins the show on the Twisted Tea Hotline. That's coming your way here as we wrap up hour number 2 of this Monday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Add more fun to your fandom with the Bally Bet Sportsbook app. Download today and get $50 in bonus bets when you place your first wager of $10 or more. Bally Bet, an official sports betting partner of the Cleveland Browns. Happy now to be joined by Ben Standig, the Washington Commanders senior writer for The Athletic, who joins the show on the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. Ben, thank you for being with us. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that last year the number 2 pick was held by the Washington Commanders. They get Jaden Daniels, and they are now a completely different franchise than they were 1 year ago. The Browns hold the 2nd pick in this draft, and while some have said it's not quite the same quarterback draft, the opportunity to turn it around remains, and you went quarterback 1-2 in your mock. What was kind of the thought process there?
Thanks for having me. Man, it was, when there's only one pick off the board, it shouldn't be that complicated to be like, what should you do? But obviously this is a pretty fascinating call because it does not seem like, teams are valuing Shedeur Sanders as like a top 2 player in the draft, top 5. Some don't even necessarily see him in the first round, all that. And yet, obviously, we know quarterbacks rule the world. Doesn't, you would know better than me, but it doesn't feel like Cleveland is like as far off from getting back into the mix for the, postseason or at least, a 500 or above record.
Yep.
And not that a rookie quarterback automatically comes in and does that. Washington, was fortunate last year, but, you got to have some hope, some potential at that spot. And it feels like that would make a lot of sense. On the other hand, why force the pick? Why not just take Abdul Carter, considered to be the top player in the draft, pair him with Myles Garrett, and now that defense is looking really formidable, but then what are you doing at quarterback? So,
yep.
I think that it is just such a debate, but at the moment at least, I'll change my mind 12 times, but at the moment I feel like the call would be to take the quarterback and hope that not only helps you this year, but buys you time to say, hey, we've got a good piece here. We just have to give it a little more time to get going.
Isn't it fascinating, though, on quarterback, just in general? And I think, certainly you make a great point there in that, last year at this time, Bo Nix wasn't a first-round quarterback. He goes 12 to Denver, and they're thrilled to have him end up going to the playoffs in his first year. And obviously some of the skill sets between Shedeur and Bo Nix are very similar, the accuracy, all of that, and you've seen it. And I don't know if you remember this, but I do from being at the Combine last year. People really liked Jaden Daniels, no doubt, but it was considered a Caleb Williams draft and then everybody else at that position. And yet right now, Jaden Daniels would have gone number 1 if you redid that draft a year later.
100%. I really do think, look, I think it's who you have as your coaching staff, all that, of course, matters a lot. But I think for this quarterback position, it matters the most. Washington was fortunate last year. They brought in Cliff Kingsbury, and he really was a good fit for Jaden Daniels, and he understood what the quarterback was about, and he catered to him a lot. And I think part of the reason I like Cleveland going to a quarterback is because of Kevin Stefanski. Because he's had success, developing quarterbacks. He's an offensive-minded guy, that it's not just going to just sort of random team who might need a quarterback. This is one of those coaches who generally you kind of think, hey, if he gets his hands on a young quarterback, he can really do something with this. And I think that's kind of what I'd lean into here as well. So I think, I think that's all part of it. Look, something needs to give with regards to this, to the Browns. And the good thing with Shedeur is, look, he's faced a lot of attention, obviously, because of his name and his dad and everything else over the last few years. But he shouldn't be, relatively speaking to guys coming into the league, he shouldn't be, rattled by the attention that comes with this situation. And, look, obviously it's, there's still, I guess, talk right about a Kirk Cousins or obviously Kenny Pickett's there. It's not like they have to say go use him week 1, which is something I generally probably wouldn't do with the rookie quarterbacks. But, having that kind of guy in the building to give you that potential, and again, to have him with Stefanski, I think to me is sort of why I'd be more inclined to do it than if it was, say, more of a, if you just didn't have that type of teacher in the building.
Agreed. And I think the only way out of this mess for the Browns is to get that quarterback on a rookie deal, and they have an opportunity, obviously, at pick 2 to do just that. Now, you talked about Abdul Carter, and, he tweeted out today he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. We know that Tennessee has their entire contingent down there at Cam Ward's Pro Day. We'll see if they do the same for Carter's on Friday. But you have him going 4th, not even 3rd. What was kind of the thought with the Giants there taking Travis Hunter?
Yeah, you look at the Giants roster, and they made a big trade to get Brian Burns. They spent a first-round pick on Kayvon Thibodeau, and it's not that Thibodeau's been amazing, but he's been good. He's still young and all that. So it's just more like, Travis Hunter's got such a unique skill set. Obviously, can play corner, can play receiver. The Giants still need more offensive playmaking, I would say, beyond Malik Neighbors. So if push comes to shove, I don't know if I would be really passing on the defensive end, who's considered arguably the number 1 guy, for the guy who's probably considered the number 2 prospect, but he plays a less, vital position at corner. Although he plays 2 positions. So it was like that, but, obviously it could go either way. That's the number 1 thing is fascinating because, Cam Ward is not, like I've heard people say, yeah, he might be the number 1 pick, but again, to compare it to last year, he's probably closer to that Penix, Bo Nix range than he is the Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. And so why pass on, again, a better prospect supposedly in Abdul Carter, but they have done nothing at quarterback, the Titans, right? I mean, They added Brandon Allen to be some depth piece. And I don't think Will Levis is without hope, but clearly there's a lot of questions there. So if they're not taking quarterback, I'm not really sure what they're doing then, because it doesn't seem like they've got a lot. They're going to have a ton of options to help this team, for this year.
It'll be interesting to see there as you kind of go through this, your mock. What kind of were the maybe some of the stress points to you, or some of the picks that you thought really were going to kind of make or break kind of the direction that this draft is going to go?
Yeah, for sure. I think the Raiders at 6, to me, and I have them taking the running back Ashton Genty.
Yep.
Which, on the one hand, I feel like would be insane from the standpoint that, if you're going to take a running back, obviously running back vibes are on an uptick these days in the NFL, thanks to some Saquon Barkley and Jahmyr Gibbs and things like that. But if you're going to take a running back that high, you pretty much have to feel like, hey, we are that piece away from really pushing this thing to contender level. And I don't think the Raiders are there. On the other hand, the board is kind of weird. The positions they need don't kind of exist. Genty is viewed as, he may be the 3rd best prospect in the draft according to, different people you talk to. And, with Pete Carroll, he's always had a fascination with, well, not fascination, but he's been more of the ground game guy. Seattle, had some running backs. They took higher in the draft, Rashad Penny in the first round, things like that. So, it may be like they have to go for the best player, and he happens to be at that spot. But, if they don't take him, then Genty may fall down to 10 to the Bears. I think that's a really fascinating marriage if that were to take place. I think the Saints at 9 are really interesting as well. They could go in all kinds of directions, but I have them taking a tight end, which typically is earlier than you would want to do that. I know Brock Bowers last year slid a little bit, and that worked out very well for the Raiders. But does Tyler Warren go to the Saints at 9? If not, does he fall down to the Colts at 14? And if that happens, then does the kid out of Michigan, Loveland, does he fall all the way down to the 20s, maybe where his old coach Jim Harbaugh is? So that's one of those positions, tight end and running back too, where if you don't go in one spot, you could have a decent fall, just because it's not positions that people tend to want to invest high in. On the other hand, these are considered to be some of the better prospects in the draft. And so that's where I think, individual evaluation versus position value, might be a tricky thing for some of these teams.
So you've got a couple of trade backs, the Giants and the Browns. So picks 2 and 3. The Giants come back in with Minnesota at number 24 to take Jackson Dart. And he's been a prospect that it seems interesting. You've seen some mocks have him go all the way up to the top 10. Some don't have him in the first round at all. But it's one of those strange phenomenons where his momentum seems to be building. What was kind of the thought for the Giants there, who recently signed Jameis Winston as well?
Right. Well, it feels like, if there's a team that's in this draft that feels very desperate, it's the Giants. I mean, I know that Cleveland also needs to get a quarterback, but I don't know. You would know better than me, but is Andrew Berry and Stefanski, are they that much on the hot seat? I don't know. It's hard to blame them for what's gone on here to some degree.
Yeah.
What's gone on here the last couple of years. Whereas with the Giants, especially after the great season of Hard Knocks that completely burned the Giants, front office
yes.
and coaching staff, like I don't know that they're making it one more year here. So I think they have to do something at that spot. It doesn't feel like Aaron Rodgers is going there, which is probably for the best. And Jameis Winston, I think everybody kind of likes that, except that again, you guys saw it last year. It's just such a roller coaster that that's not the answer. That may be a decent bridge, but I think they have to get some type of optimism and youth at that spot. And I don't know where Jackson Dart goes. At the moment, I kind of feel like any of this top 10 talk feels just like sort of prisoner of the moment, that the desperation. But if you're a quarterback who's not getting projected to be picked that top 10, and then all of a sudden you're outside the top 10, now you're getting thrust up, I just think that's probably overstated. I know, again, last year Bo Nix wasn't getting talked about anywhere close to the top 12 for the most part, but late in the process he was. And, again, there were already 5 quarterbacks off the board, and clearly Sean Payton saw something in him. Again, Sean Payton, similar to Stefanski, like, okay, if this guy sees a quarterback he wants, I'm probably going to lean into it. So, if there's one of those quarterback whisperers out there who says, look, I really think Jackson Dart's the guy, so be it. But beyond that, I just think the Giants are, if they don't get one of the top 2 guys at 3, I just think they're going to have to make that move, both for PR sense as well as, to get a younger guy in that spot.
By the way, the idea of T-Mac going to Houston at 25 to pair up with Christian Kirk and potentially returning Tank Dell and Nico Collins, that would be, for C.J. Stroud, to have those 2 big guys on the outside would be terrifying, I think, for a lot of people in the AFC. You do have the Browns coming back into the first round, trading with the Commanders, believe it or not, to get an offensive lineman to tackle Kelvin Banks out of Texas. What was the thinking there?
Yeah, look, obviously, Cleveland could go in a couple different ways, and I know DeJuan Jones is there, and I know they signed ex-commander Cornelius Lucas to give some depth, but if you're going to have the quarterback, it isn't just enough to say we drafted the guy. You've got to be able to protect him, and Jones has had some injuries, so I just if Banks, look, not everybody, there's like 35 players that people want to put in the top 20, right? You can't all do that. And in mine, I had Banks falling. He could go as early as, say, maybe 18 to the Seattle. But here, if he's available, guy was an award-winning lineman last year. Some people see him as a tackle, some as a guard. It just felt like, you've got to upgrade that spot, or at least maybe have a little more solid options than Jones. And, look, they might think DeJuan Jones is the answer, but, he's been harder to stay on the field. So I just thought that, to pair the quarterback with a, one of the better offensive linemen. And look, I also think that, I know Cleveland has 10 picks this draft. A few teams do.
Yep.
And that always sounds like, great, keep the picks. But, this is not considered to be a great draft, and this was not considered to be a great year for free agency. And one way to sort of maximize your assets is to not hoard the picks, but trade them. Combine a few to get a better player. And this felt like a good opportunity for Cleveland to do that. Washington's case, they only have 5 draft picks, so to get a little bit extra would be helpful for them as well.
It certainly would be. Ben, this is great stuff. By the way, I'm sure what you're getting to do now as the senior writer for The Athletic covering the Commanders has gotten a lot more fun with that team's turnaround this past year and looking to build on it. What did you think of the Tunsil and Debo acquisitions?
Yeah, I think, I think they would have much preferred to not have to trade a bunch of picks away, but the board broke the way it broke. When Ronnie Stanley re-signed with the Ravens and the rest of free agency, there was just nothing there at tackle that was particularly interesting. They're picking at 29, even if they get an offensive tackle they like. That's a rookie, and you got to protect Jaden Daniels, and this
Absolutely.
offense did so well last year. So I think just making that play for Tunsil, I think was probably I think it was something that I think they needed to do. And with Debo, it's a flyer. It's not a huge risk. Adam Peters, Washington's GM, was with San Fran when they drafted Debo, and they've just got to hope that they're getting a Debo that's closer to the playmaking versions we saw in 2021 and 23, not the guy last year who kind of labored through the season and looked like maybe he lost a step. So it's a little bit of a risk, but it's not a big expense to do it. And, hopefully for Jaden Daniels, it gives him another weapon to play with.
Indeed, it's going to be fun times there in Washington, and a fan base that certainly, like ours here in Cleveland, has been thirsty for a good football product, and they certainly get one right now. Ben, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was Ben Standig, who joined us on the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. So much more to come here as we wrap up this Monday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, an official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, we are wrapping it up on this Monday. Potentially a throwing session happening in the gym. We will see if that's the case or not.
G-Man's, I've tasked him with, go get me footage, post it. There's a lot of big workout days happening today, but maybe none bigger than what's going to happen in our field.
Not after he called his quarterback a 4.5.
Yeah.
Which is still It's still very, very
And
stunning.
he has a game tonight?
So what are you saying? Yeah, game tonight. Game night. Is there a good ball down there?
Go get one from
From
Gillisy,
equipment?
the great Gillisy.
Yeah. All right. I definitely think we can do that. I don't even think we need a reason. All right. So the pro day's happening down there. By the way, what are we hearing? What are we thinking? And right now, what we're hearing is that, in fact, Andrew Berry is not at this pro day. That it is Glenn Cook and one of the national scouts for the Cleveland Browns that are at this pro day. Now, Glenn is going to know the U better than anybody, but it is a little bit of a surprise, right?
I think so. Have we officially started? Do we have an official list? I mean, I've seen some reports, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen lots of reports to that effect.
Yeah, the official itinerary, the G-Man has his hands on the official itinerary that says throwing starts at 3:20.
3:20?
Yes.
Okay, but they're not airing it to...
It doesn't sound like anything till 4:30, and it's on ACC Network and NFL Network.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they used to...
30.
I mean, it was wall-to-wall.
It used to be
like
live
3 or
and
4
fully...
reporters or anchors.
It always is. I'm stunned that that's not what's happening here.
I don't, maybe because of the time of the day.
I don't know. Maybe. It's very odd. Very strange indeed. All right, big thanks to our guests here on the show, and great job to Gibbe and the G-Man and everybody who made this all happen. Nick Shook, Charlie Potter, and Ben Standig for joining us on the programs today. It was great. Good content. We'll be back with another loaded show for you guys tomorrow. The Next Level's next. Thanks for listening.